Hey guys, welcome back. So today we're going to be in our Ready workbook on page 247. We're going to be doing a lesson in the very back of the workbook, actually in our language handbook. And the lesson we're going to be focusing on today is commas with coordinate adjectives. So if you haven't yet, go ahead and take just a minute to get out your Ready workbook, get out a pen or a pencil, a yellow highlighter if you need it. I know sometimes colors help us remember. So if you want to go ahead and pause the video, make sure you have your materials. And let's get started. So, with any new lesson, the first thing we need to do is make sure we have our title boxed in. And the title is commas with coordinate adjectives. And you may ask yourself, uh, I have no idea what this is. Well, that's what this is for. We're going to teach you. So, the next thing I need you to do is rewrite the title of your lesson at the top of the page. And we're going to start breaking down that title. So, commas. We know a comma is a separation or a break in a or a pause in a sentence. So you use a comma when you need to separate something like two words, or you use a comma when you have a break or a pause in the sentence. Now, coordinate adjectives. Well, you just took some source book notes on coordinate adjectives, so we already know a little bit about that, but let's refresh. We know that coordinate adjectives occur when multiple words describe one noun. Coordinate adjectives make sense when reordered. And you separate coordinate adjectives with a comma, or you can always separate them with the word and. If you're unsure, that's a little trick I've learned over the years. You can see if the word and fits in between it. And if it does, it's a coordinate adjective. But we'll talk a little bit more about that later. All right, so let's go ahead and move on down to our introduction. So, when you use more than one adjective to describe a noun, sometimes the adjectives need commas between them, but sometimes they do not. So, you don't always have to have a comma between it, but if you're going to leave that comma out, that means it's not a coordinate adjective. So, this whole lesson is going to be us practicing when to use commas. Um, with coordinate adjectives. All right, so down below we have some notes. These are very similar to the notes that you took down in your source book. So we're going to take some time to go over this and review what they say. All right, so if the adjective makes sense, no matter what order you put it in, those are coordinate adjectives. And coordinate adjectives have to be separated by a comma. And down below we have an example. The Civil War was captured on film by brave, dedicated photographers. So you notice brave, the word brave and the word dedicated, they're kind of lighter colored print, right? And there's a comma between those. So this is an example of a coordinate adjective. Brave and dedicated, they're both adjectives. They are words that describe photographer, the noun photographer. So we know that they have to be separated by a comma because they are coordinate adjectives. And we know that you could reverse the order of those and it would still make sense. The Civil War was captured on film by dedicated brave photographers. That still works, right? So reordering those adjectives makes sense. And that's one way we can tell that those are coordinate adjectives and that they have to be separated by a comma. Okay. If the adjectives would not make sense when reordered, you do not put a comma between them. So if you can't reverse their order and have it make sense, you do not need that comma. It's very unnecessary. So here's an example of that. The Civil War was the first major conflict to be widely photographed. So we have our adjectives, first major, they are describing the conflict, right? But you can't reverse the order of those words. It doesn't make sense. So it would be the Civil War was the major first conflict to be widely photographed. That doesn't make sense. So we know these are not coordinate adjectives, and because they are not coordinate adjectives, they don't need a comma. We can leave it out and be perfectly fine. So when you have a series of 3 or more adjectives, some might be coordinate adjectives and others might not be. You have to decide where the commas go, and if they are even needed. So I have an example down here for us with a series of 3 or more adjectives. This one has 3. And we're going to talk about how this is a coordinate adjective. So the photos offered many fascinating, realistic images of wartime. So this can't be perfectly reordered. You can't mix up the order of these words and have it still make sense. So, for example, the photos offered fascinating, many realistic images of wartime. That doesn't make sense. But 2 of those can be reordered, and that would be fascinating and realistic. So, for example, the photos offered many realistic, fascinating images of wartime. You can reverse realistic and fascinating and have it make sense. So, fascinating and realistic are coordinate adjectives. Many and fascinating and many and realistic, not so much. All right, so this is kind of your introduction to commas with coordinate adjectives. So, I'm going to have a Khan Academy video attached and posted for you in your learning path. If you feel like you need to go back over that and um, review, you are more than welcome to. If you have questions for me about anything that we've talked about in the introduction, you're more than welcome to shoot me an email, comment on this on Google Classroom, and I'll be more than happy to spend some time going over it with you. But if not, we're going to wrap up our introduction and stay tuned for part 2 of this video where we will be doing the guided practice together down at the bottom. All right.